Oh, come behold the works of God, the nations at his feet.
Welcome to Calvary Chapel Corinth with Senior Pastor Charlie Villard. Our desire is to comfort those in any affliction with the comfort by which we ourselves have been comforted by God. We are blessed to have you join us today as we dig into God's Word, chapter by chapter, verse by verse.
Genesis chapter 26. Isaac and Abimelech. So we finished up last week with chapter 25 and Esau selling his birthright. Talked a little bit about that, this, sort of this happy love story that started and where the movies would end and it'd be this perfect thing and they'd live happily ever after. It wouldn't be the case. That they would struggle with infertility, and Esau and Isaac would, Esau and Jacob would battle in the womb, and then they would battle in life. But what we got here in chapter 26, as we start to read, it says there was a famine in the land besides the first famine that was in the days of Abraham. Isaac went to Abimelech, the king of the Philistines, in Gerar. Then the Lord appeared to him and said, "Do not go down to Egypt. Live in the land of which I tell you. Dwell in this land, and I will be with you and bless you. For to you and your descendants I give all these lands, and I will perform the oath which I swore to Abraham your father. And I will make your descendants multiply as the stars of heaven. I will give your descendants all these lands, and in your seed all of the nations of the earth shall be blessed, because Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws." So Isaac dwelt in Gerar, and the men of the place asked about his wife. And he said, "She is my sister," for he was afraid to say, "She is my wife," because he thought, "Lest the men of the place kill me for Rebekah, because she is beautiful to behold." Now it came to pass that when he had been there a long time, and Abimelech, the king of the Philistines, looked through a window and saw, and there was Isaac showing endearment to Rebekah, his wife. And Abimelech called Isaac and said, "Quite obviously she is your wife, so how could you say she is my sister?" Isaac said to him, "Because I said, lest I die on the account of her." And Abimelech said, "What is this that you have done to us? One of the people might soon have lain with your wife, and you would have brought guilt on us." So Abimelech charged all of his people, saying, "He who touches this man or his wife shall surely be put to death." Then Isaac sowed in that land and reaped in the same year 100-fold. Watch 100-fold, and the Lord blessed him. So let's go back in the next 20 minutes. I think we can get through. I don't know. We'll see. So Isaac takes his family. There's a famine. He says the second famine, not different than the first one that Abraham had went through. But he travels, and it says, and Isaac went to Abimelech, the king of the Philistines, in Gerar. That the Lord appeared to him there and said, "Do not go down to Egypt." It was clear in Abraham's command to his servant back when he said, "Please go and find my son a wife," but never take him outside of this promised land. The promised son was to always remain. And so the Lord, warning him, said, "Hey, do not go down to Egypt. Live in the land of which I shall tell you. Dwell in this land, and I will be with you, bless you, for you and your descendants. Or for to you and your descendants I will give all these lands. I will perform the oath which I swore to Abraham your father." So it's this cool thing that Isaac is like, look, we got to go somewhere. We've got to have food. We've got to travel. So he goes to Abimelech, this king of the Philistines, who, ultimately we know from David and Goliath. But the Lord stops him and says, "Hey, don't travel to Egypt. Don't travel out of this promised land." He's never to leave, and he never would leave the promised land. You're to stay here. And he said, "If you stay here and dwell with it, I'll bless you. I'm going to pass on to you all that I promised Abraham." And because, he'll give the reason why in a minute. And 4, he says, "And I will make your descendants multiply as the stars of heaven." So he passes on to Isaac this promise that I will make a nation out of you. All kinds of people will come from you, much like I promised Abraham. "I will give your descendants all these lands, and in your seed all the nations of the earth shall be blessed." And what a picture that he's promising him this fortune that's not material and possession, right? He's not even going to be able to see it all come to fruition. He'll die before it ever occurs. But he promises him that he will multiply, he will make great nations, and all the nations on the earth shall be blessed. And why? In 5, he says, because Abraham obeyed my voice, kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. Which we know to not really be the case, right? That Abraham didn't do it perfectly. He made mistakes. And matter of fact, Isaac's about to make the same mistake Abraham made. However, it's interesting to see God's perspective, right? God's perspective of Abraham is he did all that he told him to do. He made mistakes. But I think this picture we make mistakes. We have things, we fall down, we fall on, yet God still looks at us through his son the same way. I love you. I forgive you. I want to bless you. We tend to get hung up on the things that we make mistakes on. So it says in 6, Isaac dwelt in Gerar. He stayed there. And the men of this place asked about his wife. And he said, she is my sister. Like father, like son, right? He's like, she's beautiful. I don't want anyone to kill me and then take her. So he thought, well, maybe I'll just tell them that she's my sister. He says that she's beautiful to behold. Now it came to pass, and it was similar, right? Such a similar story. Abraham and Sarah, she was beautiful, he was scared. Isaac, right? The son following the father. Which is also the reminder of, whether we like it or not, we tend to follow a lot of things. We can tend to fall into these same patterns as our parents and doing the same things they do. And, people will say, well, why does that occur? My dad often says, which is great, he'll say, you live what you learn. So you end up watching and learning something, and then you live it out. Doesn't really apply to Isaac's case because Isaac wasn't born when all this would occur. But no doubt he heard the stories, and no doubt he could probably see the things that had occurred in their marriage and how it affected them. But in his fear for his wife and her beauty, he's like, look, she's my sister, hoping that's gonna help him. In 8, it says, now it came to pass when he had been there a long time. Who knows how many years? And, really, interestingly enough, like think about however long is a long time, this is his wife, right? Are they not acting as husband and wife? But what we'll see here is ultimately, and he says that it came to pass, they'd been there a long time, that Abimelech, the king of the Philistines, looked through a window and saw, and there was Isaac showing endearment to Rebekah, his wife. So they were living in secret, right? This love story that Rebekah, started, right? She's like, hey, who's this guy in the field? And it's Isaac, that's going to be your husband. And this, then the struggles with infertility, for how it affected their relationship. And then struggles, with the pregnancy and all that went on with that. And this hearing from the Lord that ultimately, what Isaac is going to carry on, which is to give his firstborn son his birthright, and to bless him and pass him on. Rebekah knows that she's going to have to do something because it's not the case. That the God said that the younger would serve the older. And now, there's a famine, which no doubt has caused strife in their household. It would anywhere, right? What are we going to eat? What are we going to do? I have kids to feed. What's going to happen? It's what we do. We're human, and they're human too. And then after all this, they've now lived in secret. So he's got to hide his wife. They've got to hide. I have no doubt that he thinks it's the best thing to do, and she likely is like, this is stupid. Like, I'm your wife. Like, stand by and do what's right. Yet they're in secret, and it says he's showing endearment to her. It says, then Abimelech called Isaac and said, quite obviously she is your wife. So how could you say she is my sister? He doesn't lie to him any longer. He says, well, look here. I said that because I didn't want to die on her account. I didn't want someone to see her and say, well, look, if we kill that guy, then she's no husband. So I'll just lie. And Abimelech of the Philistines of all people, right? He's like, what is this you have done to us? One of the people might soon have lain with your wife, and you would have brought guilt upon us. And he knows that doing something like that would have pronounced guilt upon them. Abimelech charged all his people, saying, he who touches this man or his wife shall surely be put to death. I mean, what if he just went to him in the beginning and said, hey, look, we're going to stay here. This is my wife. She's beautiful. My dad made this dumb mistake of doing this. I want to be honest with you and just, this is my wife, but, I want to be here. I would like her to be protected. I would like to be protected as well. But Abimelech God uses this. Abimelech tells everyone, you do not touch this man or his wife. You shall surely be put to death. His people, loyal to him, listen. And then at 12 it says that Isaac sowed in the land, and he reaped in the same year 100-fold, and the Lord blessed him. And so he starts planting and harvesting and planting and harvesting. And the Lord's just, man, he's just filling the fields, and then he's harvesting, and he's filling these likely grain silos, like what we learn about in the book of Ruth. But it's the Lord who is blessed. So in the middle of this famine, this man, his hand, God's favor is over, and his hand of favor is over Isaac. It says the man began to prosper and continued prospering until he became very prosperous. It's an interesting way of writing, at least in the New King James. You couldn't use the word prosper anymore in one sentence. But as he began prospering, the God blessed that and blessed the next and the next. And now it's become obvious to others that he has a lot. And it says he continued prospering until he became very prosperous, for he had possessions of flocks and possessions of herds and a great number of servants. So we get this lesson, right? Even in the midst of him lying, the Lord blessed him and he used him. And not a reason for us to lie. We should be honest. We should go in the name of the Lord. We should stand firm in that. But the Lord blessed him through it all. But then once all of that came out and he starts living in a manner likely worthy, a worthy manner, and he starts harvesting, he's becoming so prosperous that the Lord is filling him with possessions, herds and servants and people, much like his father, Abraham. Along with that, likely, no doubt, becomes weight of, managing people and managing herds and people's complaints and trying to keep them happy and satisfied. But it says that the Philistines envied him. Now the Philistines had to stop up all the wells which his father's servants had dug in the days of Abraham his father, and they had filled them with the earth. And Abimelech said to Isaac, go away from us, for you are much mightier than we. So no doubt in his prosperity, the people have started looking at Isaac and going, man, maybe he should be our leader, right? Maybe he's a mighty man. He has all of this stuff, this God that he, is following and being blessed by. No doubt a king would look and go, yeah, that guy's probably a threat, right? I need you to go, need to be away from us. Like, you're a mighty man, but you're mightier, you have more than us, and I can't have this to continue on. So you need to leave. Well, part of the struggle here is as Abraham has dug all these wells, these weren't 2-foot deep wells, right? Dug with a shovel. These could take weeks, months, years, maybe even. And in that land, there were seasons where without water, they would die. They would perish left and right. And Abraham, as he traveled about with his great possessions, his great, servants, was digging wells so that they had water where they were. Well, the Philistines have gone and buried all this over, right? Because they envied him, they stopped him up. And it basically, which means just filled them all in. So all the work that was done by his father has been undone. And it says in 17 that Isaac departed from there and pitched his tent in the valley of Gerar and dwelt there. Isaac dug again the wells of water which they had dug in the days of Abraham his father, for the Philistines had stopped them up after the death of Abraham. Right? So in their envy and jealousy, they're like, well, we're just going to, stupid move, honestly, right? Like, why not just use the wells that have already been dug? But to undo things, and sometimes we do that, right? If we become jealous or envious of someone to our own, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, detriment. Great word. To our own detriment, we'll do stupid things, right? Like that saying, don't cut off your nose to spite your face, right? You'll do things sometimes just because you're mad and bitter and jealous. So you're like, well, you know what? I'll take care of that. And it's like, well, in the end, you actually just shot yourself in the foot. Why do that? But Isaac has this large group and a following, right? And they're going to need water. He needs to provide for them. So he goes about digging up all these wells again. It says, and he called them by names which his father had called them. 19, also, Isaac's servant dug in the valley and found a well of running water there. This is even better, right? This running water is very different. The hard part in a lot of places, right, is and we see it here to some extent, but like standing water can become a hazard. A pond is a cool thing to look at, but it promotes mosquitoes and bugs and bacteria and algae and ducks come along and go to the bathroom and spit in the water. And, you go swimming, you can actually get sick from, drinking the water. You actually have to be real careful. I learned this, years ago, well, decades ago at this point. When we were kids, my dad, he worked hard and they put in a swimming pool. And look, and then there was the envy of the neighborhood, right? People that never wanted to hang out all of a sudden were at our house every hot day, like, hey, what are you doing today? And it's like, yeah, I got to go. I'm going swimming. Close the door and just walk away. I knew then what they were doing. Once, my cousin who would go, he didn't live with us, little guy, but he brought the swim trunks that he used in the lake and ended up introducing like a black algae. And it is mustard algae, as other people call it, right? It is impossible to get rid of. And ultimately, to really kill it, you basically have to dump all kinds of algicide in, put all your pool, all your tools, all your clothes and everything into the pool. And it turns the water dead black. And then as it filters out after it kills everything over time, you treat it. It's a very expensive thing. I got it in our pool. And, one way to prevent it is to use copper algicide. Copper will eat the coating on the algae and kill it. The downside to copper algicide is if you color your hair, it'll turn it green when you're swimming in there. So it's, if you were like, oh, I bleached my hair, it could potentially come out with a green tint if you spend too much time in it. But these wells, likely they move around, they dig, they need a source of water because they can become corrupted over time. But this running water, much like a river, right? It can push everything down in the river as the water moves. It keeps it all along the bottom. But if you were to take a cup of water off the surface, it's going to be pretty clean. So they find this valley. And they dig this and they find this running water. So for them, they're like, hey, look, this is great. We should stay here. In 20, but the herdsmen of Gerar quarreled with Isaac's herdsmen, saying that the water is ours. So he named the well Esek, because they quarreled with him. Ultimately, he named this well Contention, because it became a contention between the two groups. And he's like, look, this is going to either end in a fight or a battle and death. Let's just move along. We'll find some other well. And so it says, then they dug another well, and then they quarreled over that one also. And so he called its name Sitnah. And that ultimately means, taking my notes, opposition. So he's like, look, there's so much opposition here. We might as well move to another one. At this point, I need to provide. There's no point in fighting over it. In 22, it says, and he moved from there and dug another well, and they did not quarrel over it. So he called its name Rehoboth, because he said, for now the Lord has made room for us, and we shall be fruitful in the land. And ultimately, this is called, the word for that, it would be roominess, right? That there's place for them to now dwell and spread out without quarreling and find a place to live. But still honoring Lord, not leaving the promised land. 23, it says, then they went up from there to Beersheba. And the Lord appeared to him the same night and said, I am the God of your father Abraham. Do not fear, for I am with you. I will bless you and multiply your descendants for my servant Abraham's sake. This is so cool. I'm promising you something. Not because you're good enough, not because you're deserving, not because of you at all, but because I promised Abraham. And God is an honorable God. He remembers his promise, he keeps his promise, and he carries it along. Right? So if God's promised something and he hasn't finished it yet, he intends to finish it. In 25, so he built an altar there, and he called on the name of the Lord, and he pitched his tent there, and there Isaac's servants dug a well. Then Abimelech came to him from Gerar with Ahazoth, one of his friends, and Phicol, the commander of his army. And Isaac said to them, why have you come to me, since you hate me and have sent me away from you? It's a good question, right? Like, you sent me out of here, you hated me. Why would you now come? Now we found this place. Why would you now come to me? But they said, we have certainly seen that the Lord is with you. So we said, let there now be an oath between you and us, and let us make a covenant with you, that you will do us no harm, since we have not touched you, and since we have not done nothing to you but good, and have sent you away in peace. You are now the blessed of the Lord. Initially, Isaac went into this land saying, look, I'm a foreigner here. These guys, I don't know who they are. They could murder me so they can take my wife. I don't trust them. So I'm going to lie. Then Abimelech finds out. He deals squarely with him and says, why'd you do that, right? No one touched these people. And then God prospered him. And he becomes a threat to a king. A powerful man, especially a man who is a man of people, right? If people are coming to him and he's providing to them, ultimately that's where power is in a kingdom, is being able to say to someone, do something, and they do it, right? That's what a king is based off. His power is in, being able to tell someone to go do something and they do it, or don't do something and they don't do it. Without that kind of loyalty, it'd be anarchy. So as Isaac grows, right, Abimelech's like, yeah, this is not going to work, right? Much like, we'll read about at some point the story of David and his son, right? Absalom sat outside saying, hey, look, you going to see the king? Oh, man, if he's probably going to say this, but if I was king, this is what I would do, right? And he's using words to win people. And ultimately, he gathers a large group of people to usurp the king. Abimelech's a smart guy. He knows what can happen. He can lose his place. So he sends them away. And they go a little ways, they dig a well. Well, that's not far enough because the Philistines want what he has. He goes a little further. They still argue over what he has. Finally, he goes far enough away that he can spread out, right? And no doubt that's what he's done, right? He spreads out. People are enjoying their lives. They're becoming still an even mightier threat. Smart of Abimelech to go, hey, I know we haven't had, the greatest seeing eye to eye, but, look, we dealt peaceably with you. We want to have a covenant with you. The Lord has clearly blessed you. And, we would like to make an agreement. And 30, it says, so he made them a feast. And they ate and they drank. And they arose early in the morning and swore an oath with one another. And Isaac sent them away, and they departed from him in peace. It came to pass the same day that Isaac's servant came and told him about the well which they had dug, and said to him, we have found water. So he called it Sheba. Therefore, the name of the city is Beersheba to this day. So they're going to spend time living here, right, and spreading out amongst. And this is, he could go, look, this is what the Lord told me about. He'd build me a nation. It's not anywhere near what God was talking about. Yes, he's going to see it, and he's going to be blessed. And he will bless him the steps along his way, and ultimately he will do that to Jacob too, right? And then referenced thousands of years into the future, right? When the Pharisees talk about Isaac, I'm the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They will make reference of all of God's goodness. But they'll settle down and they'll do that. And it says here, when Esau was 40 years old, he took his wives, Judith, the daughter of Beeri, the Hittite, and Basemath, the daughter of Elon, the Hittite, and they were a grief to the mind of Isaac and Rebekah. What a way to end that. Right, and that'll be the end of the chapter we'll cover, but it's an interesting thing. What really was the grief? 2 wives? Double trouble? Maybe they were good ladies. Maybe the grief is that they were watching the son who would really supposed to be the firstborn to inherit everything, living so opposite of God, right? Living opposite of what they've probably modeled in their home. Like, hey, look, it's a husband and a wife. God will bless that. But either way, Esau caused them grief to the mind of Isaac and Rebekah. It's interesting, like Isaac will forget about this to some extent when it's time to bless him, right? If Isaac was really looking at it, we know there was a division between Isaac and Rebekah with both of their sons. One loved one, the other loved the other. But we see that at this point it is grief. And as parents, or people that, not even parents, right? People that have loved ones, but especially as parents, right? Can you imagine some of the conversations they might have had laying in bed? What's with him, right? Why is he doing that? What are we going to do? What's going to happen? A mother and daughter-in-law is already difficult to some extent, and then them double daughter-in-laws. Imagine that's probably pretty difficult. But I imagine they were parents that still at some point when they sat by themselves and went, where did we go wrong? What did we not show him? Why is he doing this? It becomes the age-old conversation. No doubt Adam and Eve had that same conversation. What happened? Why would our son kill our son? Why would he do that? What did we do wrong? Adam probably told her it was because you bit the apple. If you hadn't done that, everything would have been fine. doubt that he said that, but that even in all of the blessings and the goodness, you go, why did you put that line in there? Because even in all of that, there's still battle, there's still struggles, right? God, it doesn't change any of God's goodness, all of the stuff he promised him. No matter how much God blesses us, no matter how much he works on our lives, there's still always going to be struggle, there's still going to be battle, and that's okay. I mean, we love people, we worry about them, especially our own children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, brothers and sisters, parents, we worry for them. But if God's as good as he says, we should trust him, follow him, and then ultimately he'll work out the details. Right? It's for him to work out. Yeah, right. That is a good point. I mean, ultimately, you have something to reflect back on once it's really poor. You go, oh man, remember when we were back there? Remember how good that was? Right? That is a good point. Thank you for joining us today. We pray this teaching has been a blessing to you. If you have any questions or would like to request prayer, you can visit us online at www.cccorinth.org. If you're local, come join us for a service at 125 School Road in Charleston, Maine. We want to remind you that the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty in God. Remain armored up, and until next time, grace and peace.